George Ward Park. It's November 10th, 2014. Mind Open Disc Golf presents an interview with Tom Monroe, the multi-time world champion and legend of the disc golf, master of the puppy, many things, many titles, many world champions, Swedish gold frisbees on his wall, everything you can imagine. Not only do I want to hear his story, you want to hear his story. So here to talk about his story and his history, Tom Monroe himself, the man. Right? You know, what did you do before disc golf?
Before disc golf, of course, I was a big frisbee player. Before that, I was totally into baseball. Well, due to a couple circumstances, I did not try out for a major league team, mainly because the teacher at the time said if I cut one more class, you'd fail me. So, by the time I got to tryouts, they were wrapping it up.
Oh, man.
So I just went home and was very unhappy.
Yeah.
But then I got on a couple softball teams. One in particular, this guy who ran the motorcycle shop, Suzuki shop, over in Sheffield. I was at school in Florence. He wanted me to play on a softball team, so he gave me a good deal on a new motorcycle every year. I played with him for about 3 years. And during practice, I'd get bored, so I'd start throwing a frisbee up in the air and catching it out in the outfield. And but before that, I had a roommate who was from Seattle, and he brought a frisbee with him to college, and we would play a lot. We'd just play catch, do trick throws, trick catches, and all that out in the parking lot of the apartment where we lived. And before that, we lived. My family lived in San Diego, and this was like '63, and that's where I first saw frisbee out at Scripps Laboratory in La Jolla.
Wow!
And these two guys were playing catch back and forth, and I'd never seen that before. So it was pretty cool because they were actually throwing it to each other. So they let me throw a couple times with him, and then we moved back to Huntsville, and didn't see a frisbee again for years until I went to college.
So when you were in college, is that when you discovered disc golf? And who were you with when you first saw disc golf? When you first heard about disc golf?
I was playing a version of disc golf when I lived in Atlanta at this little park, Peachtree something park in Atlanta, and I didn't realize it. I just had a frisbee and was by myself after work, and would just throw to a tree across the park until I hit it.
Wow.
And I was living with this girl in college, and she got so frustrated that I was out throwing frisbees up in the air and catching them all the time. She said something like, well, if you like those frisbees so much, why don't you just get a job with that company? I said, wow, good idea. So I started writing letters and ended up going out to California and meeting Ed Hedrick and the guy who was in charge of the International Frisbee Association. They said, Whammo couldn't give me a job. But the International Frisbee Association would make me the Southeastern Regional Director for the IFA. And oh, by the way, in another year, you're going to be in charge of starting Frisbee tournaments all over the South. And I was thinking, next year? I said, well, I'll go ahead and start one in Florence this year. And that's how we became the first one.
Oh, okay.
And that was in '74.
Nice.
So thanks to her being all uppity at me,
Yeah.
I ended up doing the frisbee thing and leaving her.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then while I was out there, I went into Ed Hedrick's office, brought me in. They gave me a tour of the Whammo plant, and, loaded me up with hula hoops and wiggles and slip and slides, and, I'm walking out like this. If I'd have known anything, I would have gone through grabbing frisbees.
Yeah, wow.
Because that's before they were getting stamped, they were coming out of the machines and all. And so after work, he took me out to Oak Grove, which was the first disc golf course. And at the time, he had metal poles in the ground. He said, I'm going to do something else. It's not just going to be these poles. So we played hitting poles, and you hit the pole and you made some noise. And then the next year, came back to 75 World Championships, he had the targets, the baskets, and the chains on them.
Nice.
And while I was talking to him, this is kind of funny, he was telling me about, well, we just had this World Championship. And I said, oh, really? Well, I would have come to it if I'd known about it. And he said, oh, son, you got to be invited. You just can't come. I said, well, I'll come next year. How about that?
Nice.
And I did.
Yes. Well, how did that lead you to the Super Puppy?
Let's see. Well, when I went to the World Champion, no, actually, 83, right before the World Championships in Huntsville, John David, who was the mover and shaker in Atlanta, came through Huntsville. He was on his way to go live with Patty Kunkel in Atlanta, and he brought the first load of Super Puppies to town. And that was probably, let's see, we had the Worlds in August, I think, so this was probably early spring. So we got a hold of those Super Puppies, and we were throwing these things at 200 plus and throwing them just as far as we could. I mean, that was the new distance disc, was this puppy putter. And of course, you know, not long after that, Dave Dunapace figured if you just put a little edge on it, it'd go faster and further. Why Jan Sobel never thought of that, I don't know. But, you know, that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's when the Super Puppy came to the South. It was what John David brought them. And as soon as they arrived, I'm going, oh yeah, we need more of these.
Yeah.
And then going, I must have been at World Championships in La Mirada, or one of the World Frisbee Championships where I met Jan Sobel out there.
Nice.
And that's been so long ago, I'm just foggy on all that. Of course, it was the 70s. I stayed pretty foggy that whole time.
Right. Well, what keeps you going today and in 2014? How are you still here? How are you relevant? Keep going.
Oh, it's just amazing. I thought I'd be dead by now.
No way.
Live fast, die young. I tried, I missed. I don't know what happened. It's I've got a whole bunch of arthritis all in me now, and like my doctor said, keep moving or you're going to be hurting. And so that's why I like to try to play around every day, just to keep moving.
Yeah.
I've had to modify my throw because of a bunch of back injuries. As you see, I can't throw nearly as hard as I used to, but no big run up and twist and flex and shot and all. So I've had to modify my distance shot and just, you know, keep pecking away at it. And the big thing I like to do now is just teach new people. You know, I teach the Frisbee classes in Sanford and UAB, and constantly trying to put new courses in.
Nice.
I should have a new one coming in here, hopefully before the end of the year, maybe 2. But, you know, I don't even tell anybody about it until it's in the ground.
Right.
Because, you know, when's that course going in? Well, let's go play it. They don't want you out there until it's in. Quit stomping around out there.
Yeah.
So that's always in the works. That's non-stop. It's always trying to sell a new course.
Right. Right. And you got into doing courses. Before that, you were doing playgrounds, right?
That was just kind of a side deal. That was with a friend of mine named Wayne Walters, who was living in Huntsville with that Patty Kunkel that I mentioned earlier. That's before John David met her. And they were like the people playing in Huntsville. Wayne Walters is actually the guy responsible for Bronze Springs going into the ground. He played basketball with Ken Gibson, who was assistant park director. They would play basketball at the Y at lunchtime. And Wayne started talking about Frisbee because we were doing it in Florence. He was coming to Florence to play Frisbee with us because there wasn't anything in Huntsville. And one thing led to another, and the sale of the targets for Bronze Springs went in. And you probably heard this story. I designed it originally to go around the lake where Drake Springs is now. And then I went to a tournament in Toronto, and Ed Hedrick came to town when the baskets showed up to have a look around and do whatever he did. Well, what he ended up doing, after they walked them all around the Bronze Springs, all the ball fields, brought them back through the pine trees, and I had like 2 or 3 holes going through the logging trail that used to go down through the middle of that whole thing. So we could finish up at the end, kind of where number 1 is now, because I started across the street.
Right.
That's where I had 18 going, much longer course. And he got in those pine trees and said, "This is great. We'll put the whole thing here." And I got back to town and heard about it and said, "What?"
Yeah.
So I went out there and I was just amazed. We got 18 holes in these pine trees. But as it worked out, it was really for the best.
Yeah.
I mean, the wintertime, it's warm because it's like a greenhouse. If the wind's not blowing, the sun's shining, it's actually warmer inside the pine trees than it is out in the parking lot. And the same for the summer, it's cooler in there than it is out in the parking lot. So it's a great place to play, and as everybody knows, this is by far the most popular course in town.
Definitely, where everybody needs to.
Yep.
So I don't know what to say next. That's probably about it, really. I don't know, unless there's just something else you want to do.
Just, you know, when you talk about all this, I just have to say how proud I am of everybody in Huntsville that's kept it all going. 83 worlds, 93 worlds, women's nationals, you know, you got to mention it.
Yeah.
And now the 40th annual Flying Disc Championship, the oldest running overall tournament in the world.
Yeah.
Because of that first one we did in Florence in '74. And that tournament itself has been in Mobile, Huntsville, and Florence over the years, and hopefully we'll get it done in a warmer month next year.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that freezing weather keeps people from playing in it when it's in December every year. It's almost like an afterthought. Well, we hadn't had it yet. We're going to lose it. We're not going to be the longest running because Virginia's like a year behind us, and they're still going.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's been like the week before Christmas before.
Yeah.
It was freezing that week.
That was
so anyway,
really cold year.
Props to everybody involved for doing that. Larry and the gang, you guys. I mean, it's just wonderful that it's still going. It keeps Huntsville on the map every year.
Yeah, that's true. Well, what about just a tip for your newbie disc golfer? You want to show us how to throw one, or you want to just tell us about it, or?
The best thing to do is depending on how strong you are, is use understable discs. Roadrunner, Sidewinder. I like the number 2 slice. I don't even know if you can get them anymore. And of course, nothing flies straighter than a puppy.
Yes.
If you can throw a puppy, you're off to a really good start. And people don't realize these things are great for up to 200 feet for anybody with a decent arm. Some people longer than that. But the thing that discourages most new players is that they get the wrong equipment. They go to a store, nobody in the store knows anything about it.
Yeah.
They end up buying a Boss that's 175 because it sounds cool, or a Viper, or a Viper because it has a cool snake on it. And then it's so heavy and so overstable, all they do is just hook it off to the left every time, and they think it's their fault, and it's not. It's the equipment. It's like giving a 10-year-old a 16-pound bowling ball. All right, go out and have fun now.
Right.
You know, so it's crucial to get the right equipment, and then, you know, of course, you know, keeping that shot coming straight across your chest, nice and flat, and letting go with a pop. I tell people it's like popping a towel. Pow! Don't break your wrist. You know, pop it back. You get a few basics down, and you'll be hooked for a long time.
All right.
Puppies for everybody!
Puppies for everybody!
It's a puppy party!